It started with the phone call no mother should ever have to take. Rain lashed against the windows as Emily whispered into the silence, "She's gone." The echo of her daughter's name dissolved into the storm. 2 weeks later, when grief had hollowed her voice, her sister Claire called, her tone chirpy and detached, announcing she had moved her housewarming party to the same Saturday as the funeral. Emily froze mid-breath. "Claire, that's the day we bury Lily," she said, disbelief trembling through her words. Claire's response came like ice through a wire. "Emily, it's just a minor event. Life has to go on." The words splintered something deep in Emily's chest. Outside, thunder rolled as if in protest, while inside her living room, framed photos of Lily seemed to fade into shadow. Emily's knuckles whitened around the phone as she whispered to herself, "Maybe some losses reveal more than death ever could." The next morning, sunlight dared to touch the living room where grief had spent the night. Emily sat surrounded by funeral brochures, her trembling hands tracing Lily's name across the glossy pages. Her mother, Margaret, entered quietly, her face pale with both age and anger. "She called it a minor event," Margaret whispered, disbelief cutting through her composure. Emily nodded, her voice fragile. She said, "Life goes on." Margaret's eyes hardened. "Then let her live with that." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock. A cruel reminder that time indeed moves, even when hearts do not. Later that day, Emily drove past Claire's house. Laughter spilled from open windows, balloons swayed on the porch, and the scent of barbecue floated mockingly into the air. Emily stopped her car, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles blanched. Inside, Claire clinked champagne glasses, toasting to new beginnings. The words echoed cruelly against Emily's memory of a tiny pink coffin being prepared at the chapel. For a moment, she imagined walking up the driveway, screaming her pain into the party's careless joy. But instead, she turned the ignition, tears streaking her cheeks like ghostly rain. At sunset, Emily stood alone at the cemetery, the earth still fresh where Lily rested. The sound of distant music drifted from town, a cruel reminder of Claire's party. "You deserved more," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. She placed a small pink ribbon on the headstone, Lily's favorite. Behind her, the horizon bled into shades of gold and violet. For the first time, she felt a strange calm, the kind that follows the storm. Not peace, but exhaustion wrapped in quiet defiance. That night, Emily sat at her desk, writing a letter she would never send. "Claire," it began, "you took the day my world ended and made it your celebration. But someday, the silence between us will speak louder than any words ever could." She folded the paper carefully, placed it in an envelope, and set it aflame in a candle's flicker. The ashes curled upward, disappearing into the dark. A farewell, not just to her sister, but to the version of herself that still waited for understanding. A week later, the silence between Emily and Claire had hardened into something immovable. The funeral was over, the guests gone, but the house still smelled faintly of lilies and candle wax. Emily scrolled through her messages and saw Claire's text. "Hope you're okay. Party was a hit." She stared at the screen, her pulse roaring in her ears. The audacity of those words cracked something inside her chest. She typed a reply, "Lily's gone forever, Claire, and you toasted champagne." But she never hit send. Instead, she closed her eyes, replaying her daughter's laugh like a ghost trapped in memory. Across town, Claire sat with her friends in a chic cafe, recounting her housewarming as if nothing had happened. "It was divine," she laughed, stirring her latte. "Emily's been distant." Her friend raised an eyebrow. "You mean the funeral?" Claire's smile faltered just for a second before she shrugged. It's tragic, of course, but we can't drown in sorrow forever." Her words floated lightly, yet even she felt the weight of them settle in her chest. For the first time, guilt flickered, small, unwelcome, and quickly smothered by pride. That evening, Margaret called Claire. Her voice was steady, but her words sharp as a blade. "Your sister buried her child, and you served cocktails." The line went quiet. Claire bit her lip, staring at her reflection in the window. "Mom, I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to care," Margaret interrupted coldly. "And that's worse." The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Claire staring into the reflection of herself, a woman suddenly unsure of what she'd become. The city lights behind her blurred like distant stars dissolving in water. Emily began sorting through Lily's things the next day. Every item, her shoes, her school drawings, her favorite stuffed bear, felt like handling fragments of a vanished universe. Her hands trembled over a pink journal filled with crooked handwriting and glittery stickers. On the last page, Lily had written, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to make people happy again." Emily broke down completely, the sound of her sobs filling the room like shattered glass. Somewhere deep inside that grief, though, a thought flickered. Maybe Lily's wish still had meaning left to fulfill. That night, rain returned as if mirroring Emily's restless heart. She stood by the window again, staring into the darkness, and whispered, "Lily, what would you want me to do?" The question floated unanswered into the night. Down the street, Claire's laughter echoed faintly from a passing video on social media. One Emily hadn't blocked yet. She turned off her phone, whispering a promise into the dark. "This isn't the end of my story. Or yours." Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating her reflection. Stronger, steadier, no longer swallowed by loss. The following week, Emily received an invitation she almost deleted on sight. Claire's charity brunch. For the children. The irony was suffocating. Yet something inside her whispered, "Go." She arrived unannounced, dressed in quiet black among pastel dresses and shallow laughter. When Claire spotted her, her smile froze mid-sentence. "Emily, I didn't think you'd come." Emily's voice was calm. Too calm. "I wanted to see how you celebrate children these days." The crowd hushed. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Grief against guilt, love against denial. Somewhere behind them, a child's laughter echoed, hauntingly familiar, like Lily's spirit brushing through the air. After the event, Claire followed Emily outside, heels clicking against the marble floor. "You embarrassed me," she hissed, voice trembling. Emily turned, her eyes glistening with restrained fury. "You embarrassed yourself the day you chose champagne over compassion," Claire faltered, words dying in her throat. The wind picked up, scattering petals from the tables inside. Emily's coat flared behind her as she walked away, her steps steady, the weight of dignity finally heavier than grief. Claire stood alone, the echoes of her sister's truth ringing louder than any applause she'd earned that day. That evening, Claire sat in her car, parked in silence. The rearview mirror caught her reflection. Smudged mascara, red eyes, a stranger staring back. She scrolled through photos of Lily's funeral on social media, faces bowed in grief. For the first time, she didn't swipe away. She lingered, the reality finally catching up with her self-made denial. She whispered, "I should been there," but no one was listening. Outside, the city lights flickered, their reflections running down her windshield like tears she could no longer hold back. Emily, meanwhile, began volunteering at Lily's old school, reading stories to children during afternoon breaks. The first time she entered the classroom, her hands trembled, but when the children laughed, something within her began to thaw. A little girl with curly hair looked up and said, "You sound like my mom." Emily smiled softly, her eyes glistening. For the first time since Lily's passing, she felt her daughter's warmth in the laughter around her. Healing, she realized, doesn't always come from forgiveness. It sometimes blooms quietly in places you least expect. One night, Claire drove to Emily's house. She stood on the porch for several minutes before knocking. When the door opened, words failed her. Emily simply looked at her. Tired, wary, but not unkind. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Claire whispered. You don't, Emily replied softly, but maybe you can earn it for a long moment. They stood in silence, rain beginning to fall once again. Claire exhaled shakily, the sound halfway between a sob and a sigh. Inside, the hallway light spilled onto both their faces, a fragile bridge between grief and remorse. Days turned into a tentative truce. Claire began visiting Emily once a week, each encounter wrapped in awkward silences and half-swallowed words. One evening, as they sat with cups of untouched tea, Claire finally said, I thought if I ignored the pain, it would disappear. Emily's eyes stayed fixed on the steam rising between them. Pain doesn't vanish, Claire. It just waits. The air hung heavy, but something softer lingered beneath. Outside, rain tapped gently on the windows like an old song trying to find its melody again. For the first time in months, Emily didn't feel alone in the room. One afternoon, Claire arrived with a small box wrapped in white paper. It's for you, she said quietly. Inside was a delicate silver locket, engraved with Lily's name. I had it made from the bracelet I wore that day, Claire added, voice trembling. Emily traced the engraving with her thumb, tears forming. Why now? She whispered. Claire took a slow breath. Because I finally understand what I took from you. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was healing. Fragile, but real. Margaret joined them for dinner that evening, her guarded expression melting as she saw her daughters side by side again. It's been too long since I saw you both at the same table, she said, her voice breaking slightly. Claire smiled faintly. Emily nodded, whispering, maybe Lily wanted this. For a moment, laughter returned, uneasy but genuine. The clinking of cutlery, the hum of conversation, and the quiet warmth of family began to stitch small seams into the torn fabric of their past. After dinner, Emily stepped outside for air. The night sky shimmered with a rare clarity, stars scattered like promises waiting to be believed. Claire joined her, hands tucked into her pockets. Do you ever feel her? She asked quietly. Emily smiled sadly. Every time I laugh again. Claire nodded, tears threatening but contained. I'm trying. Emily placed a hand on her shoulder. That's enough for now. The wind carried their words into the darkness, the universe holding witness to two broken sisters learning how to breathe together again. Later that night, Emily opened Lily's old journal again. Between the childish doodles and glittery stars, she noticed a line she hadn't seen before. Mom, tell Aunt Claire I love her too. Her breath caught, tears spilling freely as she clutched the page to her heart. She walked into the living room where Claire was dozing on the couch and gently placed the open journal beside her. Claire's eyes fluttered open, reading the words through blurry vision. For the first time since the funeral, both women smiled. Small, fragile, but undeniably real. Spring arrived quietly, carrying the scent of new beginnings through Emily's garden. She stood beside the small cherry tree planted for Lily, its blossoms finally blooming in tender pink clusters. Claire joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. I've been thinking about hosting something, Claire said cautiously. Emily raised an eyebrow. Another housewarming? Claire smiled faintly. No, something for Lily. A remembrance garden for kids who've gone too soon. The air stilled, filled with the gentle hum of bees and memories. Emily nodded slowly. That's something she would have loved. For the first time, Forgiveness didn't feel impossible. It felt alive. A month later, the garden was ready. Children played among the flowers as families placed ribbons and photos on the memorial stones. Claire moved through the crowd, her once polished composure replaced by quiet humility. When it was time to speak, she stepped to the microphone, her voice trembling. This began as my way to say sorry, but it became something bigger. It became about love that doesn't die. Emily watched from the front row, tears glistening but her heart steady. Claire looked up, locking eyes with her sister, and smiled through the trembling. After the ceremony, Emily and Claire walked along the garden path in silence. Children's laughter floated behind them, blending with bird song and the rustle of petals underfoot. "You did, Claire," Emily said softly. Claire stopped, emotion catching her off guard. "No, we did. You let me try." Emily smiled faintly. Maybe Lily knew we'd find our way back through her. For a moment, the world felt light again. Their shared pain now transformed into something gentle, something that carried both love and memory like sunlight through glass. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Margaret joined them in the garden. She placed a single candle beneath Lily's tree and whispered, "For peace." Emily and Claire knelt beside her, the three women forming a quiet circle of love and loss. "She'd be proud of you both," Margaret said softly. Emily looked at Claire and nodded. "Of us all." As the flame flickered, the cherry blossoms shimmered in the fading light, and the wind carried a soft fragrance that felt like Lily's laughter. Sweet, fleeting, eternal. Later that night, Emily stood alone by Lily's tree, the stars glowing faintly above. She whispered, "You brought us back, my love." Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Emily smiled, her reflection shimmering in the small candle flame. She whispered, "Neither did she." The night breeze lifted a few petals into the air, spinning them upward until they disappeared into the dark sky, as if Lily herself was sending her answer back. Soft, wordless, eternal. Months passed, and the garden bloomed again, this time with laughter instead of grief. Emily found herself guiding volunteers, planning events, even smiling without forcing it. Claire arrived one morning carrying a camera. "I thought we could make a short film. Lily's story. The garden's story," she said. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "If it helps someone heal, yes." As Claire filmed her sister among the blossoms, her lens captured something beyond beauty. A quiet resilience born from loss. Through that viewfinder, Claire finally saw what she'd broken and what had been rebuilt. Not perfection, but grace. A few weeks later, Claire showed Emily the finished video at her house. On the screen, clips of Lily's drawings and the garden's first blooms flowed together, narrated by Claire's trembling voice. When it ended, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector. "It's beautiful," Emily whispered. "It's her." Claire replied softly. The sisters sat side by side, tears glinting like candlelight. For once, no apologies were needed. The story itself had become their shared redemption, a bridge neither had known how to build until now. When the film premiered at a local community center, the audience filled every seat. As the credits rolled, applause erupted, some standing, some wiping tears. Claire scanned the crowd, spotting Emily smiling proudly in the front row. Afterward, an elderly man approached her. "I lost my daughter too," he said, voice cracking. "Your story gave me peace." Claire's eyes filled instantly. She turned toward Emily, who whispered, "She'd be proud." For the first time, Claire believed it. Not out of guilt, but truth. That night, Emily and Claire returned to the garden. The air was thick with the perfume of evening blooms, the stars scattered like sequins overhead. They placed a small plaque beneath the cherry tree. "Lily's light, For every child remembered. Claire brushed her fingers over the inscription, whispering, "Thank you, Lily." Emily closed her eyes and smiled. She forgave us before we ever knew we needed it. The breeze rustled through the branches like a whispering child's laugh, soft and eternal. Weeks later, life had regained its rhythm. Emily opened a small counseling group for grieving parents at the garden's edge, while Claire documented their stories, turning sorrow into shared strength. On the first session's morning, the sisters stood together watching people arrive. Faces marked by both pain and hope. Claire whispered, "We turned her day of death into something living." Emily nodded, her voice tender but certain. "Because love doesn't end, it just changes shape." The camera panned outward, capturing the sisters framed by the cherry blossoms, forever bound by love, loss, and light. A year later, the Remembrance Garden had become a sanctuary. The cherry tree was taller now, its branches heavy with blossoms that shimmered in the morning light. Emily walked through the path lined with engraved stones, her fingertips brushing the names of children she had come to know through stories. Claire joined her, holding a printed flyer. "The foundation wants to expand," she said, her smile soft. "They want to plant a tree in every city." Emily stopped, eyes glistening, Lily's light spreading everywhere. The sisters stood side by side, the gentle rustle of petals carrying a promise far beyond loss. Later that day, Margaret arrived with a wicker basket full of cookies, waving at the children playing among the flowers. "I see my grandbaby's work has grown," she said warmly. Claire wrapped an arm around her mother, smiling. "It's hers as much as ours." Emily joined them, laughter rising between the three women, a sound that once felt impossible. As they sat beneath Lily's tree, Margaret whispered, "Maybe this is what heaven looks like. Us here, together." The sisters exchanged a glance of quiet gratitude. For once, no ghosts lingered. Only love, endless and alive. That evening, Emily sat on the porch, rereading Lily's journal. A faint breeze turned the pages on its own until it landed on the last one. The same line she'd once found. "Tell Aunt Claire I love her too." This time, she smiled instead of crying. The sky burned orange with twilight, and the air smelled like spring rain. She whispered, "She'd be proud of how far we've come." From the garden, Claire called out, "Mom, you coming?" The word, "Mom," spoken so naturally, brought tears to Emily's eyes again. But they were the good kind this time. Night fell over the garden, and lanterns glowed softly among the trees. Families gathered for the annual remembrance event, their laughter mingling with the hum of violins. Claire stepped onto the small stage, her voice steady and full. "We began with grief, but what we built is love in motion." She looked at Emily in the crowd, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. Emily nodded, her heart swelling. Around them, petals drifted in the night air like blessings. For everyone there, Lily's light wasn't just memory. It was the pulse of hope itself. Long after the guests left, Emily remained beneath the cherry tree. The garden was quiet now, silvered by moonlight. She placed her hand against the tree trunk and whispered, "Thank you, Lily." Behind her, Claire approached, wrapping a shawl around her sister's shoulders. "She's still here," Claire said softly. Emily smiled, her eyes glistening, always. The camera pulled back slowly, revealing the glowing garden, the sisters standing together beneath the blossoms, the wind carrying petals upward toward the stars, where love and memory became one. Infinite and infinite, indivisible. I am here.